How do you feel about organ meats, either as whole or supplements?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about this. I don't think they're necessary for the average person. I know I get there are people out there that say they feel better either, chronically or short term by consuming some of these organ meats. I just don't think to me, they're not particularly palatable. And so again, I'm not going to eat a diet I don't enjoy. I mean, there's no long-term sustainability in eating something you don't like every day. And I've tried many, many cuts of organ meats over the years. I've eaten probably more than most have. As far as trying the different varieties, I've had them cooked by professional chefs, and I'm just like, at best I could say it wasn't awful. I don't seek them out. I don't crave them. I don't espouse that you must consume this certain amount. I think it's interesting. Early on in the carnivore movement, there were some people that were, pretty significant influencers that were saying that these are the greatest things and most important things, and you got to eat this. And when you go back and look at the people that originally started this, but I'm talking years before I ever was in the picture. These people that have been talking about this stuff for 20, 30, 40 years, they all said, hey, look, organ meats aren't necessary. And many of the people that sort of promote that have now moved on. And they started their carnivore thing and now they've moved on to something else. And maybe they made a lot of money selling organ supplements. I generally think for most people, it's kind of a waste. There are a few people who come say, well, I felt better when I did this or that, but I'm not convinced that they're certainly something that's necessary. And, if you go back to like Stefansson, who was a Canadian guy, he was of Icelandic origin, but he was Canadian. He did a lot of the exploration early part of the 20th century. And he literally, there's an interview from, I think, the 1950s of him on camera saying, hey, look, we literally fed the organs to the dogs. We didn't really eat them, and none of the other Inuit people really ate much of them either. And so I know it's kind of like people will point to, well, if you look at a great white shark, it'll, an orca, a killer whale, it'll eat the organ, eat the liver of some animal first, or they'll point to wolves will go and they'll go after the viscera first. And my thought around that is, in many cases, when you look at these animals living out in the safari and hunting, they are, and to some degree looking for some level of fat in their diet. And the only place on an antelope, or zebra or whatever it is, that they're going to find any significant fat that they have access to is the viscera. So they'll rip the belly open and chew up the mental fat and the kidney fat and some of that stuff. They can't access the brain. They can't access the marrow. It's kind of interesting if you look at human evolution, because we could. As early hominids, we were able to figure out how to crack skulls open and crack bones so we could get that marrow and get that high fat. That's what a lot of people theorize as drove our brain growth, because we had ready access to animal fat, which is very, very energy dense. And so I don't know that they're seeking out liver as much as they're seeking out internal fat. And I would propose that the average human that doesn't like liver today would not have liked it 100,000 years ago. It just it has a weird taste to it. It has like kind of like our kidneys, they got this urine soaked organ that maybe you don't like the taste of urine, or the kidney or the liver has, whatever metallic taste that you don't like. And, if we look at like human evolution, it is assumed that we had adequate calories to evolve a brain, because you look at there's monkeys that have been swinging around in trees for 21 million years or 25 million years, eating the same old fruit they've always been eating. And their brain is still tiny, still 250, 300 cc's. Whereas humans, at least if you look at an evolutionary model, we supposedly, started to evolve into these different hominid species, starting with Homo habilis. And because we had access to a new source of energy, particularly animal fat, as we became scavengers and then later hunters, that is what allowed us to consume the brain, consume enough food so we can grow a brain. And we would have to do that in periods of surplus. If we were starving all the time, then we would have never grown that big brain. So we had to have abundant supply of energy to do that. And I think that came through hunting, and I think that came through having ample fat. And so since we are in surplus situations, we probably would have, if I were to come across a carcass sitting there, today, I would give me the back strap, give me the loin. You can have that stinky old intestines. You can let the dogs eat that, or the crows, or whatever. That's what I would have done today, as I would have done probably 100,000 years ago. And I think that's what humans did. They were living in a time of surplus, taking down big megafaunal animals to include elephants, mastodons, mammoth. Interestingly, before that, and this is an interesting thing that most people don't know, it is postulated. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that supports this. There's a great book called Megafauna written by a guy named Bass Edmeades, who talks about for about, I don't know, close to maybe 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 years, the early food that we sought out were these giant tortoises, because, a giant tortoise, it doesn't run away. All it does, it sucks into the shell. And so no animal can get it. No animal with claws and teeth can get it. But guess what a human with a big old rock can do? You got 800 pounds of meat sitting in front. All I got to do is crack through the shell. You take a big old rock and you go crack it on there. Guess what? Tortoise is dead. You got food forever. And so it looks like we cleared out all these, giant tortoises over a period of hundreds of thousands of years. There's good fossil evidence to suggest that we did that. And then we basically made many of them go extinct. And so there's still some, like I was in the Galapagos down off the coast of Ecuador, last fall. And you can still see them there. And they just sit there. They don't do anything. They can't run away. How fast does a tortoise move? It doesn't move fast at all. And, they suck their head into the thing. You just go and bash it with a rock, and you got food for a couple of weeks.
Interesting. I'd never heard that. Makes sense, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
How do you feel about bone marrow, bone broth? Do you ever consume those?
Yeah, I do. I mean, more so than, I can't say I consume a lot. Like if marrow's on a menu at a restaurant, I'll almost always get it because it tastes delicious. And, you can put it on top of your steak and mix it and make a marrow butter. Bone broth, I think is fine. There's some good things there. Because I'm not a guy that likes a lot of hot drinks. That's how most people consider it. Sip it like a soup or as a coffee type of thing. I never drank coffee. I never drank tea. I just don't like hot drinks, so I just don't drink it. But I think it's fine. You can have that, and I think it's quite nourishing. It could be a good supplement to the diet for those people that like to sip on hot stuff, like you guys in Canada in the middle of January. Might be a good thing to sip on instead of hot cocoa or something. So yeah, it's great.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
The last 9 years, I have probably consumed, without exaggeration, like 10,000 steaks. That was one of the things that struck me 10 years ago when I first went carnivore. It was like, I don't even know my digestive system's working because I don't feel anything. I have no perception of digestion.